Hello, and welcome to No Wrong Choices, a podcast about the adventures of life that explores the career journeys of interesting and inspiring people. I'm Larry Samuels, soon to be joined by the other fellas, Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. For those who might be joining us for the first time, and for those who haven't done this yet, please support No Wrong Choices by following us on your podcasting platform of choice and by giving us a 5-star rating. We also encourage you to join the conversation by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices or by visiting our website at NoWrongChoices.com. This episode is part 2 of our conversation with the retired NFL wide receiver, broadcaster, and as we learned in episode 1, lead dad, Curtis Conway. Larry, I guess staying consistent with episode 1, why don't you lead us into this conversation as well?
Yeah, I think it's worth repeating, though. If you haven't heard part 1, go back and listen because what we hear in part 2 is amazing, but part 1, I mean, it's really the beginning of his journey that acts as the framework of what we're about to go into now. Candid, genuine. I think, again, the thing I'm most struck with Curtis is, sometimes as an interviewer, you ask a question and you almost can anticipate what the answer is going to be. And Curtis just never gives you that answer. He's going to speak from the heart. But what he tells you about being a professional athlete and how he became to be a professional athlete, the mentality, the finding something that you love and doing it, they're so valuable and they can actually be a part of anything you try to do in life. It doesn't have to be professional sports as it was for Curtis. But yeah, we're about to get into a conversation about much deeper things, about family, about being a professional, about when it's time to walk away from being a professional athlete. These are difficult conversations, but Curtis makes them easy and he makes them accessible, and it's just pure honesty, and I love this conversation.
So yeah, there were a lot of eye-popping and jaw-dropping moments in that first part, and Shay, you're totally right. If you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1, you should go back and listen to it. Now, I'll tell you what, part 2 has just as many of those kinds of moments where Curtis now delves into his playing career when he was with the Bears and with the Jets and, bumping around the league. And the one thing that I was so surprised about was, his attitude, his very open attitude about, why are other teammates of mine not as angry as I am over losses? Or, what do I have to do to make sure that the guy behind me doesn't take my spot? Or how can I help the guy behind me, improve without him taking my spot? Things like this, that kind of open honesty about what's it like to be a professional athlete, the grind, so to speak. And then to talk very openly and honestly about life after football, because obviously for all these guys, there is life after football. So it's the transition from one part of life to the next, to the next, to the next, where he goes from, professional athlete to professional broadcaster to essentially being a professional family man. And just hearing those answers and the thought process, it was just so refreshing to hear. And you can tell that he's very, very at ease and happy with all of these choices and decisions.
Absolutely. And, a very big theme of this conversation is family and how important family is. And interestingly, as we've mentioned before, Curtis's father-in-law is Muhammad Ali, and he tells a great Muhammad Ali story in this episode. So stay tuned. Here is the continuation of our conversation with Curtis Conway. Curtis, bringing this I guess back onto the path a little bit, as your college career as you're progressing in your college career, as you're having the success that you're having, as you start to look towards the NFL, when did you start to think about the draft, and how do you start to prepare for the draft? Are you hiring an agent? Like, what is that process, and what is that step in your journey?
Great question. The biggest headache of my life. Like literally, it was the worst time between my last, I would say, 2 games in my the last 3 games of my junior season until the day I got drafted. It was like the worst time. Should be a good time. And the reason why is, number one, I'm a junior. I'm a true junior. Do I leave? You hear everybody saying he'll be a first rounder. He'll be a top 10 pick. You hear people saying, man, he's only been playing the position a year. He needs more experience. And so you got all this stuff going on with just trying to leave school. So once I decided to leave, now you got to pick an agent. Now, picking the agent is somebody you've never seen or don't know, and you're trusting them with your life basically at this point.
Right.
And so you hearing everybody say, you got people sneaking on campus. I work for this guy. I work for this guy. It was so much crap going on. It was miserable, man, because you really have to make the right decision on who's going to represent you. And you've never been in this situation before. Like I don't have a father. My mom, was a young mom. So, and at the time, she wasn't doing well. So, I mean, again, like my grandmother said, I was making decisions on my own as a young man. So trying to figure out who was the best agent was so hard.
How did you go through that process?
Well, really, I ended up trusting somebody that I knew who knew the agent. It had nothing to do with the agent. The only reason the agent got me is because he knew the guy that I knew.
And who was it? Who did you go with?
I went with IMG.
Okay.
Tom Condon.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Big agent. Yeah.
Yeah. I never talked to Tom. I never saw Tom. I didn't know what Tom looked like until I actually signed my contract.
Wow.
I signed with him. Yeah. It had nothing to do with him. It was who do I trust? Who am I closest to in this arena that I can actually question if something goes wrong. And it
was your friend. It was your friend.
Well, it wasn't really a friend of mine. It was a guy that was around that I knew. And in that relationship, I didn't know. It wasn't like I knew this guy and he couldn't, derail me. He was just the only guy that I knew of or knew that was in that environment. Everybody I knew that was family or friends was in my neighborhood. So people in that arena, I had no clue about. So making that decision was really, really, really difficult for me to do. So, but that's the only reason why I even chose IMG is because of that situation. The other part of that was being drafted. I never really cared about what team I was going to go to until you start hearing all the media on the radio saying, well, the Chargers are going to pick him at 23. The Raiders want him because Al Davis loves speed. And so in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm staying in L.A. The Chargers throw the ball. The Raiders throw the ball. And then all of a sudden you start taking these trips to these organizations, that want to draft you and they're interviewing you, going through this whole process. And, all of a sudden you get drafted, and I got drafted by the Bears. And I was like, wait a minute, the Bears? I hadn't really talked to them the whole time. I took a trip there, and that was it. I didn't speak to nobody. My agent wasn't saying anything about it. I went there, and the first thing came to my mind is the 85 Bears. Like, man, they throw the ball.
That's
like,
the running team.
That's right. Walter Payton and everybody else.
Right. Yeah. Like, how are, the Bears? Like, really? Like, I couldn't get over that. Like, they don't throw the ball. Why would they pick me?
Ground and pound.
Yeah. So although I was happy, it's an ego thing, man. I'm the 7th pick of the draft. I was the first receiver taken. Wrong team, though. So,
jeez.
Like, I would have.
Maybe they wanted you to play quarterback.
Right. Yeah, probably, right? But I would have rather went later and went to a team that threw the ball. But and that was my own ignorance at the time, not really understanding, man. If you win in Chicago, man.
Yeah.
Chicago was such an amazing city to play in. But man, when I got drafted, man.
You were not excited.
No, I'm like, man, I ain't never known the Bears to throw the ball. I'm going to be blocking in Chicago.
All right, so I wanted to kind of talk a moment ago about the notion of, like, you're not having a great deal of insider knowledge as essentially as a college student looking for an agent. I mean, obviously the NBA has done a lot in terms of what they call their mentoring programs, in terms of bringing in veteran athletes to speak to the rookie classes about, hey, this is how you should think about, saving your money. And this is how you should think about, when you are talking about endorsements. And this is how you should think about when you're looking for agents and, how to protect yourself, etc. And I think the NFL does something very similar. Have you ever participated in mentoring programs like that in the NFL?
No, I haven't. But I've definitely, my phone, there's a lot of players that have my number. I've never done it through the NFL, but I do talk to players about things. I love doing that. I feel like that's our job, and I give them to them raw, man. I'm not a salesman. And I have.
No, I mean, I would think I think they would appreciate your honesty.
Well, here's the thing. Most of the guys, if you ain't telling them what they want to hear, they're not listening. They're there, present. They hear you, but they're not listening. I've always said you got to get to the person that's closest to them, because if you don't know, like, and these were kids that I knew personally that made it, that played in the league. Now, for me to go, and this, and I'm just, a lot of people think this is not true, but in my mind, this is a reality. We've always had people come back, even in my time, to tell us, man, do this with your money. Don't hang around these group of guys, man. You need to leave them alone. Man, you can't bring your own friends with you. Nobody's listening to that.
Right.
Like, we don't know you. You know, you're trying to tell somebody something and we don't know you. So they'll get guys who played in the league to come. And I'm not saying it doesn't impact players. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for the most part, we listen to people that we really feel like got our best interests. You know what I'm saying? Like at that time, you got to think about it. You're young. You're 20, you're 21 years old. You got all this money and everybody's telling you what to do with it. And I'm talking everybody you don't know. I'm talking like even your agent. For an example, I'm going to give you an example, and just think about this for a second. I hate when people say, you can't hang around these guys no more. You got to get away from these guys. You got to think about this. For 21 years, these are the people that's in your life.
Right.
These are your real friends. This is who you are. All of a sudden, you meet this agent, and he's giving you all the right advice. But you wasn't there at 15 when I was broke. You wasn't there at 16 when the drug dealer dude gave me money so I can eat. You wasn't there when Miss Smith down the street gave us 2 slices of bread so I can make a sandwich because we didn't have a loaf of bread. Right. So now you got this group telling you one thing, and you got this group that you just meet, a former NFL player. Yeah, you cool, you a Hall of Famer. Dude, I don't know you. Even your agent, like, okay, you my agent, but man, you wasn't around here when I was dealing with all this. I want to take your advice, but man, no, I got to help these people. So I always say, man, those first 3 years, like, those are the prayer years. You hope you go to that second contract because it all really is maturity. Because we're broke. The first thing we do is we go buy homes, we go buy cars, we go do all this thing. We're not investing nothing because most of the people we're around don't understand investment. It's go to work, get a check, pay the bills, and go check the check. So we're not educated on none of that stuff. Probably now they are, but you're not educated on it. So to get through to a young guy, man, people like to say all the good stuff, man. But again, I'm around these guys. I'm very, very authentic, open, and real with them. And I understand when the guy is still hanging around the crowd. Like, he lives in a great neighborhood, out of his neighborhood, but he has nothing in common with his neighbors. He's 21 years old. He's rich. He has nothing in common with his neighbors. So guess what he does to have fun on the off season? He goes back to what he knows and where he's welcome and where he's comfortable. He's not comfortable in that environment. And the first thing outsiders say, why is he still hanging around that group? They don't seem to think about really other than, man, you're making $1 million or $2-3 million. You need to get away from them people. How? This is family. These are friends. Yep. So it becomes, so I allow these guys to talk and open up and say things that they're a little afraid to say because they see I come from that. Man, I'm not gonna get on you because you make a mistake. You went and messed off some money. Man, we all did. Some of us was lucky to play 12 years and recoup it. You got to buy mama a house. People don't realize it ain't all you just blowing your money. It's like you taking care of people.
Sure,
like
the people who took care of you.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, you the guy who made it. So it's no longer, can I borrow $10? It's no, can I borrow $1,000 because I'm about to lose my house. I got to pay my taxes. Right. Yeah. That whole dynamic change. So I'm honest with these guys. I'll allow them to make those mistakes without man, you dumb. You hear that all the time. Man, that's stupid. No, it ain't. It's so normal. Unfortunately, people are afraid to speak truth. And that's almost everybody. I will say today, just because you have more people now with more knowledge while they're in college, they have a tendency to do better early. Not to mention, they're not getting $800,000, $1 million. The contract these guys getting today, if you go broke today, man, something wrong.
Yeah, you did something very wrong.
Yeah, you get a lot of money today, right?
It's like Brewster's Millions.
And you're getting paid in college now, too, which is very different from when you played. So
absolutely.
A lot of differences.
Yeah.
So regarding your personal journey then, was that the biggest eye-opener when you get to the Bears and make it to the NFL? Was it on-field stuff? Was it the off-the-field stuff? What was the biggest eye-opener for you, like talking to yourself like, wow, I'm going to have to really make an adjustment here or figure this out or get this going in the right direction? Like, what was the biggest thing?
I never felt like I was going in the wrong direction because you can't make me do something I don't want to do.
Sure.
So on the field was going to take care of itself because of who I am as a football player.
Right.
I knew that I didn't have a lot of experience as a receiver, and I'm playing against the best of the best. Because I was the 7th pick, I had a lot of pressure on me to come and turn the program, turn the organization around. That was a lot of pressure playing in a big city and not having the experience as a wide receiver playing.
Who was your quarterback at the time?
Jim Harbaugh was my quarterback my first year.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, well, we didn't really communicate because, I was a rookie and he was a veteran. So,
Right.
Back then, man, it was like, we didn't have the same room as the veteran seemed like. The veteran was like they were like grandpas, and the rookies, we were like the little kids tearing up, But the football stuff I knew at some point was going to take care of itself just because the confidence I had in me as an athlete, not just a football player, as an athlete, I knew I was going to be capable of making an adjustment at some point. Off the field was tough because, again, I didn't leave South Central at all. You got to think about it. Middle school, high school, elementary, college was all right there in South Central LA. I didn't leave, so my life was right there, and all of a sudden now you got money. I moved to Orange County. I'm speaking from experience when I say I'm that kid who lives in Orange County in a nice neighborhood away from the neighborhood. But I'm coming, I went to USC. Let me back up. My first 3 years in the NFL, on the off season in the spring, I was back in class at USC finishing up my degree.
Oh, interesting.
So I would go to school after class. I would go back in the neighborhood at my grandmother's house and wait for the traffic to die down.
Wow.
So I'm there, and I never forget one day after this was probably 2 months into going back to school. I was on the freeway going back, and it was crazy to, at this point, really pay attention to this. The further and further I got away from my neighborhood, the nicer it got. And it never dawned on me because I never lived nowhere else. I remember being in Orange County one day and saying, man, I wish everybody I knew I could buy them a house around here. Because it was boring. But I'm living in a great neighborhood, everything is nice, big houses and clean. But it was boring because I don't know these people.
You're not with your friends. You're not with your people.
I'm not with my friends. So, I would spend a lot of time. Like, it was times that I was down there when I shouldn't have been down there. I mean, it's 12 o'clock at night. I'm in South Central LA as a Chicago Bear, but
nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah, and nothing happens good throughout the day in South Central. But remember, this is home. Like somebody driving down the street that was in the NFL and see Curtis Conway standing out there with these guys. Man, this is dangerous. This is like, why is he here? Like, our minds at that time, we're not thinking like that. Like, this is home for us. What do you mean? Why am I here? Nobody can understand it unless they've been through it.
Was there a moment in your journey where you pivoted? And I guess what I'm imagining is whether it was towards family, whether it was towards wanting something more beyond football, like after you became a pro, as you were on that path, as you were creating, at least looking from the outside, a more stable life for yourself. Was there a moment where you pivoted towards a different version of you, so to speak?
When my twins were born, it wasn't. I mean, you got to remember, I don't feel like I'm on a bad course. I feel like I'm doing, because I never got in trouble. I never caused trouble. I was always the guy that held my own and did what I wanted to do, and I never was, I would say, bullied, or nobody could make me do what I didn't want to do. So I never felt like I was doing something.
It was never a transition period for you.
It was never a transition like I got to start doing this, because again, I was already on that. I was on the path. It just wasn't the path that most people would want to see. But I will say what changed me is having a responsibility of twin boys. I mean, it changed the way I dressed. It changed the way I thought. It changed a lot because I grew up without a father. You know, I've never said daddy a day in my life. My mom was pregnant at 14 and had me at 15. Like I said earlier, I was making decisions on everything on my own at 14, 15 years old. And my mom and my grandmother just went with whatever I decided to do. I didn't want that for my kid because I knew deep down inside how lost I was. I needed a man's approval. I wanted to go talk to a man about things that I didn't want to talk to my grandmother and my mom about. And I knew my grandmother and my mom loved me more than anything. But it was just certain things that I was just like, man, I wish I had a father that I could sit down and just say, Dad, what you think about this? I mean, think about the draft process. Think about the agents. Think about being in the streets, you know, who I'm hanging with. Like everything was, Curtis, what you gonna do? And so I never wanted my kids to be in that situation. So again, when my sons was born, it was just, it wasn't a thought. It was just instinct. This is my responsibility. And I don't want my kids my kids ever having to look anywhere for any advice, for nothing. I almost get jealous if I find out my kids are asking somebody else something.
How old were you at that time?
24.
All right, so you were probably like mid-career at that point. Actually, not even, probably just the first
No, that was going into my third year. I never forget it. That was going into my third year. And that's when my career actually took off. Actually, I had my kids, my boys, January after my second season, my kids were born. In my third year, that was my breakout year.
Yeah, that was your first 1,000-yard season, right?
Right.
Right. So yeah, because I know what you had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with the Bears. Your third and fourth year, correct? You would know better than I. I don't know why I said correct. Yes, but
yes, you are too.
It's all part of the lingo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to jump I don't want to jump through the career because I mean you had such a good career, but at the same time, it has to be in your mindset at some point that the career is going to end, and I know that I want to. There's so much more life ahead of me, right? I'm going to be probably in my 30s, and life doesn't end in my 30s. So, was there ever a point in the career where you said to yourself, "Okay, I know one day I'm not going to be able to play anymore, or I'm not going to want to play anymore. I have to figure out what's next." When did you actually say that to yourself? I'm going to look towards what's next.
Never.
Really?
You got to remember, I live in the moment.
Right.
I didn't know how to think about other things. I always tell people I'm a creature of habit. If you want to do something to me, you follow me for 3 days, and for the next 6 months, this is what you're gonna do. That's me. I can't do. I don't focus. I don't do more than one thing at a time. I don't even try to think about more than one thing at a time, man. I was a football player until they told me I couldn't play. That was my mind. So you got to remember, you can't tell me I can't play football.
Right.
I never thought about career-ending injuries. I never thought about being cut. In my mind, I was going to be able to play this game as long as I wanted to play it. I will say this. I did think about when I retired, I wanted to be a dad. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be there for my kids. Right. I know a lot of people was, trying to be businessmen, and I grew up without a father. So I felt like man, who can honestly say, honestly say, they did exactly what they wanted to do in life and retired at 35 years old and have the well-beings to now do whatever you want to do. Man, I felt so blessed that financially I was stable, that, man, I could just be a daddy. I can be a father. I didn't care nothing about being no businessman, to each his own. I just wanted to be a dad, make sure I was there for my kids. I didn't spend money when I played. I put a lot of money up because, again, I wasn't trying to do nothing. I wanted to play football, and that was it. So I was fortunate enough by fear and just by my person, just how I am, I didn't spend a lot of money. So when I retired, after 12 years, I was good. So it wasn't about what do I want to do next. It was, I knew what I wanted to do while I was playing. I wanted to be daddy. I wanted to be a father. So I'm a very simple guy.
Yeah. So that moment comes and you're being a dad. You're being the best dad you can be. You're fulfilling that part inside of you that knew that you needed to do that. How does the broadcasting thing come about? Was it hard for you to even take on something else because being a dad was that important to you?
Well, unfortunately, that was my first marriage, and we ended up divorcing, and my kids moved to Arizona. That's another story. You'll be here all night with that story. But when I was done, the kids would be with me for 6 months, and then they went with their mom for 6 months. So what am I doing for 6 months sitting there twiddling my thumb? I'm in this, I made some really good investments by having some great relationships with friends and people that I knew that were pretty good businessmen that helped me out with some investments. But again, I'm the type of person that I like to do what I want to do. And the investment part it wasn't fun. It was, okay, you take some money, you do some, you get into it, and everything that I got into, it wasn't fun. It was just to make money.
Yeah.
I couldn't coach because, again, when I have my kids, I'm still part of an organization. I can't be 100% daddy, so I couldn't coach. That's what I really wanted to do, is coach. So the next best thing was broadcasting, and anybody in Chicago, any media person that covered me in Chicago would tell you that's the last thing we thought he would do. It's being broadcasting, because I can care less about the media. I didn't want to do interviews. I didn't want to talk after the game.
So they're still cursing your name to this day.
Well, it's funny because when I was broadcasting and I would travel the country and do games and see guys that covered me, they would say, "Man, you showed matured."
You developed empathy and sympathy and whatever else, whatever other word I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah, but the broadcasting brought me as close to the game as I could. I could be, because again, I wasn't the type of guy that would sit there and watch a football game. I was never that. Like, I was the guy during football season. I couldn't wait till the October come so NBA start. I'm watching NBA games on Tuesdays during football season. So that brought me, because it made me study at this point. Like, if you're calling a game, you have to study, you have to watch film. If you're broadcasting, I've always wanted draw my own opinion. I didn't want to wait till a producer gives you a bunch of notes. Like, I love the process of preparing for shows. I always wanted to find something that nobody else was talking about within a topic. So it was challenging for me. I needed that challenge, but it was challenging doing something that I enjoyed doing, and it was football. So that's what kind of brought me to broadcasting, probably. And I didn't start broadcasting until maybe 3 or 4 years after I got out the game, and I did a few investments. And I started from the bottom. I mean, I worked locally, wasn't getting paid. I went to the broadcast boot camp for the NFL.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
what's that like? What happens there?
You learn, you know what, that was the best thing happened to me, because at broadcast boot camp, some executives that worked for some networks pulled me to the side, and they just gave me some real sound advice. Like, you don't need to go through all these channels. they basically told me what I needed to do, and it cut a lot of time out and focused on the wrong things. So if anything I got out of it was some good advice on my road. I still didn't get, the big jobs, but at the same time, I knew I didn't have to go back to school and go to communications class and do all this.
That's great.
This stuff that I actually thought I had to do. And I actually thought that everybody on TV just knew everything about everything. So getting there, because I mean, seriously, I used to be like, man, how does this guy know all this
Right.
stuff? Like I knew nothing about broadcasting. I know,
there's
they
like
got
15
researchers.
people telling them exactly what what
I
everything
think we're
is.
going to send Tushar to broadcast boot camp next. That's next on our agenda.
Right,
Did you?
right.
So it sounds like you enjoyed it. Was it fun?
Man, I loved it. I loved it, man. You gotta think about this. To sit there during the week and watch tape on 2 NFL teams, get on a plane and go call the game, and you know everything about the game and you done study. That's literally, that's your job. Like, give me a break. You gotta think about where I came from. You trying to tell me you're paying me to watch tape all week, and I'm gonna spend 3.5 hours in the booth talking football?
That's great.
Man, stop.
And you're going to pay me for that? What are you, nuts?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Man, it was so cool. The only thing about me when I was in studio, I'm a little too real.
Yeah.
And so how mainstream is. They want you to kind of tap dance a little bit. So, I prided myself on being authentic. And again, you got to remember, I never do things for money. So if I was to get fired because
you'd be fine.
I was fine with it, because as long as I can walk away and I'm standing on my morals and my principles, and I'm only stating the facts based on my research and my experience, you can't tell me this is not my experience. But I understand how the machine works. And, I'm not going to be on the machine like that too strong. So, but it was weird thing. People would always say, man, you're probably the nicest guy off of camera, but on camera, we can't get you to not say this. You're gonna say this to your mom.
I'm thinking of Roy Kent from Ted Lasso right now for all those people who watch that show.
But you got to think about it. I'm the guy that if you give me the topics the day before the show, I'm just the type of person I can't sit there and know something and not articulate. Now, I'm never going to be crazy on TV, but I'm not going to go with the flow because it's low hanging fruit. I'm not going to go with the flow because in somebody else's mind, the expert, like I'm the expert.
Yeah. Tell like
in
it
my
is.
mind, I'm the expert. So I don't care who said it on ESPN. I don't care who said it anyway. I don't care if a head coach said it. My experience and what I see is it's coming from me. It's not coming from nobody else. And
of course,
I always felt like doing that. I was the guy I was the guy on TV would say things that coaches couldn't say publicly, and I was also the guy that players can't say publicly. For an example, as a player, I can watch a game and know it was terrible play calling. Man, that was a terrible game plan when I'm studying the tape. But that player after the game can go on in an interview after the game and said, man, the coach was calling some terrible plays. Man, the game plan, we practiced this all week and we never called it. But as somebody that's been there, I can say that on TV. Whereas players always get blamed for stuff. Coaches never get blamed. And same thing when I was doing college football. It was certain things you couldn't say about the kids. I'm like, man, are you around some of these kids? Like, the way they talk, you talking about hurting their feelings. Like, man, come on. The way these kids be talking, like, no, they gonna get it too. I'm just gonna be honest based on what my eyes see, and sometimes that could be a little tough for studio. So
honesty hurts.
Yeah, I never really I like studio, but like I'm more of a radio podcast guy. I'm not
we love it. It's going well so far.
Perfect.
So, Curtis, it sounds like, the pivot towards broadcasting went extremely well. It was fun. It was fulfilling and everything else. I think the other pivot we have to talk about is towards what you're doing now. You mentioned earlier that you had twins. I know that you have, kids now again. Can you talk a little bit about this part of your life? We know that you're married to Laila Ali. We have to reference that, of course, on the program.
Yeah, you better reference it. Don't get me in trouble.
She might come find us afterwards if we don't bring her up.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, talk to us about that pivot towards family, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, family's always been important to me, and I got it wrong the first time, but that didn't deter me from wanting to be married again. So I've always liked, the idea of being a family man. Again, like I said, I was around that in my neighborhood. So that was a family. So at this point, funny story, the reason why I'm kind of just sitting here today being daddy, which I really enjoy doing, is when me and Layla first got together, we were both in transitioning from our careers. I was kind of transitioning from football. I think she may have had maybe 3 more fights before she decided, she wanted to have a kid. And before we got married, we talked about, kids in the future. And the main thing we came up with is we didn't want to have nannies and we didn't want to have babysitters and we wanted to be present. And so, time goes on, we have kids, and we're both able to juggle our careers. We were both traveling a lot, but it never affected someone being present at home. We never, ever, ever had to have somebody at the house while we were on the road. It wasn't until my kids started to get older and they started getting into sports where, we sat down again. I like to say we sat down at the team table and, we had to change the game plan. So we sat there and I was doing broadcasting. Of course, my wife is doing so many amazing things in TV and business and work and speaking. And, she's
your
a real...
Your wife is her own cottage industry, for God's sake.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And when she does it, man, I admire my wife's work ethic, man. It's she wakes up in the morning and, after we're gone taking the kids to school, she's in the office working from times, and she loves it. She loves the grind and doing what she does. And so that leads me to this, that we when we sat down, we both knew we both couldn't keep going, doing what we were doing. Our kids are getting older. We're traveling a lot. Who's going to be there to take the kids to practice, school, and all this? So, unfortunately, but fortunately, I didn't think I was going to be the one when I had this conversation before we had kids. I was thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to be the one to keep working and doing what I want to do, and she's going to be at home with the kids. Well, the smart thing was for her to keep doing what she's doing because, honestly, Layla really loves what she does. And we complement each other on who we are as people. So, although I had to, swallow my pride and throw my ego away, it's worth it, man, because I got a real team player. And so I like to say that, because again, I use everything for football, even in my marriage. Although I don't want, I ain't gonna say I don't like being in this position because I still want to work and do what I like to do. But I like to say it like this. We had a balanced offense and, I was getting 8 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Guess what? They're playing prevent defense, Curtis. You got to block now. So, so you're not going to get the statistics that you want. So,
back to the Bears blocking for you, Curtis.
But will you be competing for her position sometime soon?
No. I can't do it.
No. That is a stupid question.
Yeah, she's too good at what she does, man. She's amazing. And so, again, we work together, man, so good as a team. Like I said, I had to swallow my pride and, put the stuff that I want to do outside of the family. I had to put that on hold because the most important thing was the team. And so in order for us to win the Super Bowl, I got to block and let her run the ball until the kids are out of school. And then I can, the game plan to change again. But for now, this is the role I got to play.
All right. So you just mentioned a moment ago the notion of Layla, your wife, loves what she does. And you talked about it before, the idea that you have to love your job, whether it be football, whether it be anything, right? There's the idea of being determined and the idea of loving it as well. Did you love broadcasting or did you like broadcasting? And then
I like
did it make it easier? Did it make it easier to walk away from it because of that?
No, I love the process. I love the process of broadcasting. I love the preparation. I didn't like the political part of broadcasting.
Okay.
Again, I love studying and researching and watching and being authentic. And, some of these broadcasters, they tap dance on TV. I've worked with plenty of guys who, on commercial break, man, they have a whole totally different opinion on something.
Yeah, they're a different person, right?
They're a different person, and they have a different opinion. They just don't want to be on TV to millions of people ruffling feathers. I always stand on my square because I'm going to always be able to go back and show you what I mean. And at the same time, if I'm wrong, I've always been open to learn. So if I'm wrong, I've never been the guy. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And so for me, when I'm wrong, I've learned something new. Now you just gave me more ammunition. So that's always been my approach. Stand on my truth, stand on my research, and say it. But again, some things, the studios don't like. And so you can't be as authentic as you want to because, again, you represent the network also. And I understand all that. So certain things are for me, certain things are not. So I believe calling games was my deal. Like, going to the game, calling the action. I love that. I love doing the radio shows because I think it's a conversation. It's not, okay, you got 30 seconds. A producer is in your ear saying you got 20 seconds left to get your point across and everybody else done took up the whole 3.5 minutes. Like that kind of stuff. It's like, how do I reword all this in 20 seconds? And nobody knows that a producer is in your ear telling you all this on live TV. But again, it wasn't, like I said, for the most part, man, even that was fun because you still talking ball. You get a chance to state your own opinion based on what you do, and you get a chance to meet great people. I didn't like media people at first, but again, I didn't know them personally, so you get a chance to hang out with them and really see, like, man, they get to see you're a regular dude. You get to see that they're regular people, and like with my relationship with Mike Yam, I mean, Mike is like a brother. Like, man, I would hurt somebody over Mike Yam. But that's the relationship we developed outside of being on TV, just driving in the car, going to different places, learning about each other, learning we probably have more similarities than not, and coming from two totally different places. So, like I said, those are the great things about doing broadcasting for me is I was able to meet some good people and have some strong relationships still to this day.
It's very fortunate, and I should point out that Mike Yam who's with the NFL Network now, is one of their primary hosts. He's doing which show at 6:00 at night?
Every night he does NFL Tonight or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Their big show, and he was a fella years ago. He was actually on our original version of the program, so that's the person that we all have in common.
Curtis, we would be remiss as professionals if we did not ask you about your father-in-law, because the great Muhammad Ali. Can you tell us a quick story about an interaction with him, something with him? I mean, this is a man that shaped the world in so many ways. So we would be remiss if we didn't ask you about your father-in-law. Do you remember the first time you met him? Tell us a little bit about him, if you could.
Man, it's crazy. It's wow. Just thinking back on it, I get emotional because, growing up without a father, to say that the first man that was even close to being the word father was Muhammad Ali, my father-in-law. Like,
oh my God,
I think about that. Like, wow, like, was this how it's supposed to be? Growing up without a father, and the first person that I can actually say was that father was my father-in-law, Muhammad Ali. It's crazy. And literally the first time I met him, I've met a lot of people, from Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson. I've been around a lot of people. It's only two people where I felt the room and the spirit change when I first met him. And that was Nelson Mandela and Muhammad Ali.
Wow. Oh my God.
It wasn't like man, that's Muhammad Ali. How you doing? It was really like an energy in the room that's so undescribable that you knew God put these two people on earth for something bigger than life. And I remember, I mean, I literally ditched him out 2 or 3 times when he
really
came. Me and Layla was dating, and you know, he would come in town and she would say, I'm about to go visit my father. You want to come? Absolutely not.
Of course. Yes, of course.
No. Like, who doesn't want to go meet Muhammad Ali?
Right.
The guy who's dating his baby girl? That's
Right.
the guy that doesn't want to meet
Fear.
him, right?
That's
Fear
the
for
guy.
the first time.
That's
Oh,
the
man.
guy. Curtis Conway. That's the guy.
It's funny because you know, it was different than any other time. Like I said, the energy when I walked in there, but before then, it was like I'm not just going to meet him as a fan. Like I'm going to meet him as his daughter's boyfriend.
Yeah.
Man.
And I know how I am as a father, you know, especially with my daughters. So it's like,
Sure.
okay, nah, I ain't ready for that. No, I'm ready for that. You know, after so many, and she never knew. She just found out because I told this story before. She never knew it. But when I finally met him, you know, of course, he had Parkinson's, so you had to be up close to kind of hear him. And he was still able to say some things at the time. And one of the first things he asked me, I mean, he broke the ice immediately. Like, I sat down, and him and Layla, they have this relationship. Like, she talks trash to him, get him going. And when we walked in the room, you know, he just was staring at me. And Layla looked at him, and she saw that he was staring. She was like, yeah, that's my man. That's my man. My heart started beating so fast. Like, oh, my God. Like, what is she doing? And it was more people there. So once we got in there, she hugged and kissed him. She left out of the room. Now it's just me and him in this room. And I'm like, man, you would have swore I was about to get a life sentence in jail. I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? She just literally just said, and she didn't introduce us like that. It was just, I mean, it was just crazy. So I was sitting close enough to him where I could hear because I was sitting right next to him, basically. And the only question I can remember was, he said, are you guys planning on having babies?
First question.
It wasn't, I don't think it was the first question, but that was the one that rattled me.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, like, me and his daughter got to be doing something to have a baby. How do I,
If I say yes?
I didn't know
This
what
is
to
a trap.
say, man. And I just started laughing, and he started smiling, and I didn't even have to answer the question, man. That was his way of kind of shaking me up, but at the same time, like, I'm just kidding, because at the end of the day, man, his spirit, it's amazing, man. Just being in his presence, knowing who he is, it's different, man. Like, I wish everybody could experience spending time with him, because everywhere I go, I could be in the airport, and it could be, I mean, I done had everybody from every nationality, I'm in the airport, and it's not, oh, you're Curtis Conway. No, you're Laila Ali's husband, Curtis Conway, who happens to be
Exactly
the
right.
son-in-law of Muhammad Ali. And then they come with this story about when they met him. And so, man, just to see all the people that he touched, still to this day, people have Ali stories when I'm out in public, if they encountered him. I know what my experience was with him for over a decade, being in his presence and learning from him. Man, he's different, man. Like, when he say he must be the greatest, and I know at that time it was an arrogance about him, but man, you know, he understood what his platform was for. And I don't know too many people, man, that's willing to give it all up. I don't know nobody that gave it all up.
Yep.
Like
And he
did.
gave up everything.
Yeah. And so, man, to see that, and to see what a lot of these athletes today, the kind of money that they're making, really don't really want to stand and lose anything because they're afraid to lose their money or piss a few people off. It just goes to show how special he was, and still present in my life spiritually today, man. So like I said, I can be here all night talking about him.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, you know. And Curtis, I think that is a great transition to sort of a wrap-up question in a way, considering the journey that you've been on, the people that you've had the opportunity to know, having the opportunity to get close to Ali, so many different things, incredible things happened in your life that you had to overcome, et cetera, et cetera. If you were talking to, you know, your son, who you mentioned earlier is a baseball player, if you were talking to another young athlete that had great passion for what they were doing, what would you tell a young athlete that aspires to follow that path? Like, what advice would you give them?
Keep going until you can't go. Keep going. That's all I always tell people. Keep going. But it's tough. Keep going. Well, they don't
Which
like
applies
me.
to everything.
Keep going. I kept going. Ali kept going. Michael Jordan kept going when he got cut. Kobe kept going when he missed all those 3-pointers. Tom Brady kept going when he was a 6th-round draft pick. Man, greatness starts because you love what you do and you keep going. Keep going until, like I said, when I was in the NFL, I never thought about what was next. I just kept going until they told me I couldn't play no more. Then I thought about the next thing. Not saying that's always the best thing, but man, if you got passion for something, man, don't let nobody deter you away from that. You got to keep going. Keep going. I tell my son this all the time. Keep going. And what you mean? Like, okay, you had a shortcoming. Things didn't work out. Like, okay, now what?
Yep.
You know, that's life. You know, I was in a marriage. You know, everybody like, oh, why are you getting married again? Man, it wasn't. Marriage is not the problem. You know, the team. It wasn't the right chemistry on that for that team. So you got to find the right players and keep moving forward, man. And right now, you know, I'm living what I've always wanted to live. I got a beautiful wife that love me, support me, and I have a family. Something I've always wanted, only because I kept going. To me, that was a disaster, going through what I went through, you know, having a divorce and my kids being able to go and move out of town. Man, that was the worst thing ever happened to me. But I didn't crawl up under a rock and say marriage is terrible and didn't want to have kids again. You know, I prayed about it. I kept my faith. I stayed on my square, and God blessed me with the teammate that I needed to win the Super Bowl.
That's incredible advice.
And you've won the Super
incredible.
Bowl, Curtis.
Yes.
You have.
More times than not.
Yeah, I got more rings than Tom Brady do.
That's right.
You're the GOAT.
That's right.
You are the
In
GOAT.
the game of life.
I won. I can definitely tell you that.
You can definitely say that.
I'm winning right now.
You are definitely winning.
Well, Curtis, I think it's fair for us to say that we won today, because this has been a remarkable conversation that, you know, we've been able to pull so much from. Thank you so much for giving us the time that you did. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. This has really been remarkable.
No, I appreciate you guys for having me, man. It was good. I had fun.
Well, that was fair to say one of the more remarkable conversations we've had on this program. It's difficult to single anything out when we've had a chance to talk to so many wonderful and impressive people. But for me, I learned so much from that conversation with Curtis. Larry Shea, what are your thoughts?
I love his honesty. I mean, I think I'm struck so much by his honesty and his answers about, you know, oftentimes athletes, as we talk about, say what we think they want to hear. And I think Curtis is just so candid. Getting drafted by the Bears, he's pissed off because they don't throw the ball. You know, Jim Harbaugh was not going to talk to him, you know what I mean, because veterans didn't talk to rookies back then. And the agent stuff, you know, finding an agent and all the people around you telling you can't hang out with your friends anymore. And he was just so candid about all of that stuff that it just really struck me. And I really appreciate his honesty and his candidness about that, because we often just hear players touting, well, yeah, so-and-so drafted me, and of course I'm, you know, forever grateful for them. But he had some gripes about it, you know. He wasn't thrilled about going to the Bears, but obviously Chicago is a great place if you do win. So, I don't know, just his candidness, his honesty. I mean, we don't often get that in an interview with a former athlete, and he really lays it on the line, and it's special.
I said it in part one, and I'll say it again. I was taken back by how shockingly honest he was, and I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I don't know about you, but I don't know how I would act if I saw an icon the level of Muhammad Ali, who then asks me, "What are your intentions with my daughter?" I don't know how I would act. I think my answer would be, "Whatever you tell me my intentions are with your daughter, sir." But the way he acted, so calm and like maybe not calm, but definitely cool, and just the way he handled himself in that situation is obviously the way he handles himself in life, etc. I mean, when you understand the level of icon that you're with at that moment, I mean, come on. You're someone special. You understand that moment, and you can obviously see that he's carried that into later life as well.
And it's touching. He didn't grow up with a dad, and here comes Muhammad Ali, his father-in-law,
the ultimate father figure, right?
The ultimate father figure, right? It was just so touching that, he didn't grow up with a dad, so he didn't really have that kind of male role model in his life. And then to have the reward, the gift of this incredible man in his life later on to kind of shepherd him through some stuff, it's just very touching. It's a wonderful, wonderful story about Muhammad Ali.
Absolutely. And, for me, one of the things that I really connected with, and Curtis and I actually connected about this on the phone before we ever did this interview, was about his choice to walk away from his career to become the lead dad and to become the lead parent. I've done something similar in my life. I still feel like I'm as busy as I was before. However, in terms of the big career stuff, I've pivoted a bit because I have a wife who is a physician and has a huge job, and we have a little kid. So, I've made a similar decision in my life. So to hear Curtis's story about what matters most to him and just to hear him talk about putting that first really, really resonated with me. And building upon that, one of the things that also struck me was just his journey and how it shaped him, his neighborhood shaped him, his environment shaped him, how all these different experiences along the way shaped him into this really extraordinary, really special person. And it just, again, opened my eyes to a different way of life, which was really, really remarkable. So with that, Curtis Conway, thank you so much for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this or another journey story inspired you to think of a friend who could be a great guest, please let us know by sending us a note via the contact page of NoWrongChoices.com. As I mentioned off the top, please support us by following No Wrong Choices on your favorite podcasting platform while giving us a 5-star rating. And then last but not least, we encourage you to join the No Wrong Choices community by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. Thank you again for joining us, and always remember, there are no wrong choices on the road to success. We learn from every experience.